You don't fulfill the mitzvah of lulav, you're not allowed, there's a prohibition to add to the mitzvah. The Torah says, I want you to take a lulav and etrog, kadasim, and aravot. And you say, you know what? I like to take an orange also. It's my favorite fruit. And you go ahead and you say, the mitzvah today, the mitzvah that I'm doing, I'm going to take an orange also. So that would be, and you take together, you take the lulav, the etrog, the kadasim, and an orange. So that would be a violation of the prohibition. You're not allowed to add to a mitzvah. Let's say I would shake the orange or hold the orange with the other species. I do the same thing. I'm treating it like the other species, or I'm taking it just like that. But technically, to fulfill the mitzvah of lulav, even if you don't shake the lulav, the mitzvah of lulav is to take the lulav. If you take the lulav without even shaking it, you take the lulav and you take the etrog, you're done. You did the mitzvah. There's a special mitzvah to wave the hadassim, the lulav as well. So that is the law of. Say it again. You can't add and you can't subtract. Well, we're going to see a fascinating idea coming up. At 31b1. 31b1. Amama. The same way we can't make less, so too you can't, because like everybody, the more obvious is that you can't detract, right? Torah says, I want you to do 4, can't do 3. But if a guy said, you know what, I'm just taking, if a guy says the mitzvah, instead of doing the mitzvah with the lulav and the etrog, hadas and rubber, says, you know what, I'm going to do the mitzvah with 3 of the 4. No good. He's subtracting. The Torah says, don't subtract. Just like with tefillin, the person will say that there are four parshas of tefillin. There are 4 different parchments, or there are 4 different, there are 4 different parshiot. There are 4 different things that are in the tefillin. The Torah tells us, I want you to put in something called the parsha, psukim that discuss Kaddish Likol B'chor, about the firstborn, where the Torah says Kaddish Likol B'chor. That's how they open up in the minyan here. That's in the tefillin. V'hoye Kviyacha is in the tefillin. Shema, V'hoyim Shemoah. Those are the 4, we call it 4 parshas, 4 subject matters, or 4 sections of the Torah that find itself in a tefillin. A person goes ahead and he says, I'm only going to do 3. He's subtracting, right? If the Kohen would only give the bracha Yivarecha Adonai v'Yishmerecha and stop there, right? And up here, instead of giving the 3, it's a 3. He subtracted. Similarly, if the Kohen would go ahead and give an extra, when the Torah says, I want you to give this bracha, and he adds to it, that would be, he's doing something more than what the Torah is saying he's supposed to do. So Amama, the same way, which is more obvious that people change mehem, you can't make less. Also, you can't add to the mitzvah. So you can't do more. So the Gemara says, Shita. Isn't it obvious? Now, we explained there are many times that the Rabbanan do add certain things that we should go ahead and, let's say, for instance, shaking the lulav, shaking that etrog. To my knowledge, it's not a biblical mitzvah. There's no biblical mitzvah to shake the lulav. The mitzvah of lulav is l'kachtem lachem, to take the lulav, to hold lulav and the etrog and that's my ravot. So let's say it's a rabbinic mitzvah to shake the lulav, and it has a purpose, right? You shake the lulav in all directions. Hashem should give blessing. It should hold back any bad things from all directions. The only good things should come from all directions. The shaking the lulav might also represent, you recognize that shaking the lulav in all directions, Hashem is all over. He's up and down and all around. So there's a lot of reasons behind the shaking the lulav, but let's say that's a rabbinic mitzvah. So how do the rabbis add? The Torah says you can't add. The basic answer for that, I would suggest, is because the rabbis are not saying that this is the mitzvah min Torah. If the rabbis would say that this is the biblical mitzvah, then they're adding to the mitzvah. The rabbis are saying the biblical mitzvah is to take the law of Enter Hadas Ravot, and but we wanna institute something else which has a very good purpose, but we're not changing. We're not telling you this is the. We're not changing what the Torah says. Torah says the mitzvah is just take the law of Enter Hadas Ravot. But we are asking you to do. We as the rabbis, the Torah says the rabbis could implement certain things. We're telling you to do that. We're not changing. We're not saying. We're not creating. We're not changing how you're supposed to do the biblical mitzvah. So therefore, that's not a violation of adding to the Torah. If the rabbis would go ahead and say, warning that the shaking of the lulav, again, that's what it might seem by the way you look at it, but it's clear. Everyone understands that I'm not doing. There's no biblical mitzvah for me to go ahead and shake the lulav. There's a mitzvah. Good morning, Jaime.
Morning, Rabbi.
There's a mitzvah for me to go ahead and to take the lulav and esrog hadas maravot. And that's why you'll see even the halacha that we take the etrog. We don't take when we pick up the before when we say the bracha. We say the bracha with the etrog turned upside down, because if we take the etrog with the etrog turned the proper way, the way it grows, then I already fulfilled the mitzvah, and I would not be able to say the bracha if I had a mind to fulfill the mitzvah with just taking it in the way it's supposed to be taken. Even if I didn't say just mere taking it, I would have fulfilled the mitzvah, and then I don't say the bracha after that, technically, because I already did the mitzvah. So we see that the mitzvah is taking the love and the etrog hadas maravot, even though I didn't do any waving. So so it's clear that we're not coming here. The rabbis are not coming to say we're adding to what the mitzvah, the Torah's mitzvah is. That you have to, this is the mitzvah, the Torah's mitzvah is to shake. We're not saying that. The rabbis are saying there's a mitzvah take the lulav esrog hadas maravot. The rabbis are saying that there's another thing that you do which is not the biblical mitzvah, and they even show you that it's not even the mitzvah. But the fact that if you took it in the right way, without even waving it, you can't make the bracha afterwards if you intended to fill the mitzvah by just taking it, because that is the biblical mitzvah, taking the love and the etrog, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu, al tilat lulav. The mitzvah to take the lulav is the fourth species without the shakes. So therefore, it's not in violation. So the rabbis could go ahead and create certain mitzvot when they're not telling, as long as they're not telling you that that's the biblical mitzvah. For instance, Hanukkah's coming. There's no mitzvah in the Torah that I have to light a Hanukkah menorah. No mitzvah in the Torah. Who instituted that mitzvah? The rabbis. So now the question is, how could the rabbis institute that mitzvah? The Torah says you're not allowed to add to the Torah. So when the Torah says you can't add to the Torah, if you're going to say that this is, I'm creating a 614th mitzvah. I'm saying this is the Torah mitzvah, or I'm changing the actual way the mitzvah is performed. I'm saying that this is how you got to do the mitzvah min Torah. That's adding. But the rabbis are not saying Hanukkah is a Torah mitzvah. No rabbi said that, there's a 600, when we count the mitzvahs of the Torah, the Rambam counts the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, right? He tells you, he has something called the Sefer HaMitzvot. It's called the Sefer HaMitzvot. It's a Sefer HaMitzvot where he counts the 613 mitzvot. He does not say that lighting the Hanukkah menorah is a mitzvah min Torah. It's not found. The only mitzvah min Torah lighting the Hanukkah menorah was in the Beit HaMikdash. Not that for me and you to light the menorah. He doesn't list that as one of the mitzvot. So that's not called adding to the Torah. We're not saying, the rabbis are not saying there's a new mitzvah in a Torah. There's a new Torah mitzvah. The rabbis are just saying rabbinically, we're obligating everyone to take a menorah. It's a rabbinical law, and the rabbinical law is not coming to change. It's not coming to say, it's not saying this is a Torah law, and they're not, and therefore this is not. It's not a violation of the prohibition of adding to the Torah. If some, some will explain. If somebody today will go ahead and say lighting the menorah is one of the 613 mitzvot, that's some will call that a violation. Because you just now you've created something that's not. You've said something that's not. There's 613 mitzvot that was said to Moshe at Sinai, and that's now you made it 614. The Torah did not obligate Ralph the Tesh to light the Hanukkah candles. Who obligated you? What do you say? The Vesel Beit HaMikdash, the Kohen, the special mitzvah, the Kohen, the menorah. The rabbis obligated you and me to light the menorah. Same thing. The rabbis obligated. We have a mitzvah of saying Hallel for 8 days of Hanukkah, morning Adam, which I think Hallel, is something that gets lost in the shuffle for some people, because if you're not in, people don't go to shul every day. They say you got to be in it, right, Jaime? You got to be in it to win it. And if you're not, people, am I correct, Jaime? And if people don't go to shul, if they're not on top of their game, I'm afraid, maybe Jaime will send out an email reminding everybody to say Hallel for 8 days. I'm afraid that people there are a lot of Jews that just go to shul on Shabbat, right? I'm sorry to say, hopefully one day that's going to change. Everyone's going to go to shul 7 days a week. So, morning Adam. And I'm afraid a lot of people don't say Hallel every day. They come to synagogue on Shabbat and Hanukkah. Oh, on Shabbat, Hanukkah, we say Hallel. Do they know every day, 8 days in a row to say Hallel? I'm afraid not. They're in their normal routine. They put on their tefillin, they daven, however long they daven for. And the way the Rambam brings down, the rabbis instituted to light the menorah, and the rabbis instituted to say Hallel. It's part of the enactments of Hanukkah, which I think needs chizuk, to remind the people to. But that mitzvah, what do we say? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech yishal mitzvotav v'tzivanu, regarding the Hallel. We also say the same way we say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher yishal mitzvotav v'tzivanu. That God has sanctified us with His mitzvot, and He's commanded us to take the lulav, or commanded us to light the menorah, l'hadlik neshech Hanukkah. That you say that bracha. It's the same bracha that you say before it's a similar bracha. Asher yishal mitzvotav. Okay, l'gmor et Hallel, whatever the custom of the community is, you say the bracha before you say the Hallel, because it's a rabbinic act. Yes, Hanukkah menorah maybe has something unique. It's a public. We publicize the mitzvah, something unique. The mitzvah is very unique. It maybe, in a certain sense, has something extra above the mitzvah of Hallel in a certain sense, but they're really the equal responsibilities in a certain sense. They're both rabbinic mitzvot, that have to be fulfilled. So it's not listed in the Rambam's counting. He doesn't count Hallel on Hanukkah as a new mitzvah. If he tells you that there's a 614th mitzvah, that will be in violation, according to some, of the principle you can't add to the Torah. So the Gemara in Shabbat asks, how could you say the bracha before we're lighting the menorah this Thursday night? What are we going to say? Baruch atah Hashem. You've commanded us. How could you say that bracha? God commanded us. Hey, Rabbi, you just added to the Torah. You just said that God commanded us to light the menorah, which sounds like you made a 614th mitzvah. And you just told me, Rabbi, that no, it's a rabbinic mitzvah. And now we're saying Asher Kiddushanu, Baruch atah Hashem, God, you are blessed that you have commanded us. Sounds like we created a new mitzvah. So the answer to that,
same thing with Netilat Yadayim, though, right? Netilat Yadayim is all right.
No, that's exactly. It's a rabbinic mitzvah. We say Asher Kiddushanu Al Netilat Yadayim. And when the ladies light the candles Friday before Shabbat, it's also a rabbinic mitzvah. There's no mitzvah in the Torah that a lady has to light the candles before Erev Shabbat. Similarly, if the lady, if the lady for some reason is not home and the man is home, the man will light the Shabbos candle. But there's no pasuk, there's no biblical mitzvah that a lady has to light the Shabbos candles. It's a rabbinic mitzvah. It's an amazing mitzvah. And by the way, there's a very interesting, but just a side point, there's a very fascinating Gemara regarding Shabbat, to appreciate Shalom Bayit, to appreciate how important it is to have tranquility and harmony in a house, is the Gemara says, if a person has enough money for a Hanukkah candle or a Shabbat candle, which candle do you buy, Shabbat or Hanukkah? The Gemara says, you got to go with Shabbat candle over Hanukkah. Why? They're both rabbinic mitzvah to have a Shabbat candle burning in your house and to have a Hanukkah candle burning in your house. The Gemara says, even though each one has their own unique qualities, but meaning Hanukkah, we all know, to publicize the miracle, it's a big deal. But Shabbat is because it brings Shalom Bayit. Why is Shalom Bayit? Because when you have a candle on Shabbat, the point of the candle on Shabbat, one of the main reasons is to be light in the house. People shouldn't fall. People shouldn't fall. Therefore, people fall. They lose. They're not in the proper mindset. There's a lack of peace in the house, and therefore that trumps the Hanukkah candle, because you're not allowed to use the Hanukkah candle to see where you're going. The Hanukkah candle, you're not allowed to have benefit from the Hanukkah candle. It's not there for personal benefit. The Hanukkah candle is a much more spiritual focus. It's remembering the great miracle. The Shabbos candle is much more practical. It's for its practical use, and therefore, but that practical use will bring harmony in the house, that the people have been able to see where they're going. They won't fall, and that trumps the Hanukkah candles. That's just a big concept that we have to realize how powerful Shalom Bayit is. That people should be in a proper frame of mind. But getting back, so now how do we say Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav? How are we going to be able to say this coming Thursday night? Or as Jaime says, how do we say every day Al Yadayim? There's no mitzvah in the Torah that we have to wash our hands in the morning before we daven, and we get up in the morning before we daven. The Torah has a mitzvah of washing hands and feet. That was for the Kohanim. They have a biblical mitzvah to wash hands and feet before they do the service in the Beit HaMikdash. But there's no mitzvah in the Torah that says that every person has to wash their hands every morning. So how do we say the words Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu? So the answer the Gemara says is yes, it's a rabbinic mitzvah. And even when we do the mitzvah, nobody says, the rabbis never said there's a biblical mitzvah to wash your hands in the morning. They never said there's a biblical mitzvah to light candles for Hanukkah. Rather, but the Torah, when the rabbis instituted a bracha, right? Who instituted the bracha on the Hanukkah candles? The rabbis. Who instituted the bracha before you go ahead and wash your after you wash your hands, whatever. But until it's the rabbis. But the Torah says, don't turn away from what the rabbis say. There's a pasuk in the Torah. So that's how when the rabbis instituted the text of a blessing, they used the same text of a blessing that you would use on a biblical mitzvah, putting on tefillin. Before we tie the knot, we say Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, because God commands put on tefillin. But the rabbis, perhaps the reason why they wanted to use the same language as the bracha is that people shouldn't make light in the rabbinic mitzvah. Imagine if every day you go ahead on the tefillin, you say Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, and on the Netilat Yadayim you say a different type of bracha. Perhaps the rabbis wanted you to realize that even the rabbinic mitzvah, there is a form of a biblical mitzvah on every rabbinic mitzvah. Because every time you fulfill a rabbinic mitzvah, you're following what the Torah says. Don't turn away from what the rabbis tell you. So therefore, because of that, it's not that the rabbis are saying the Torah tells you to go ahead and light the Hanukkah candles. But what rather we're saying is, Asher Kiddushanu, we light the Hanukkah menorah. And the bracha that we state before the menorah or by the Netilat Yadayim is we're stating that this thing that we're doing, we're about to do, is a mitzvah that really is also Hashem. This is also Hashem's will. This is God. Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav. God wants us, morning Adam, to light the Hanukkah candles, even though And God, and even though God never told us to light the Hanukkah, God says put on tefillin, Adam, right? He never told you to light the Hanukkah candles. But this is what God wants you to do. It's like He's commanding you to do this. How is He commanding you to do this? Not directly. It's not a direct command. Sometimes, there's the boss and there's the middleman, because the middleman gives you the orders, but that's what the boss wants you to do. The boss never said you to do it. The boss never, but the boss says you listen to the middleman. Therefore, when you listen to the middleman, you're doing what the boss wants, and that's exactly, I think, appropriate to say regarding this mitzvah of when you light the Hanukkah candles, you are doing what the boss wants you to do, even though he didn't tell you directly. But the boss says, "Listen to my manager." So when you're listening to the manager, so when you're in a company, when somebody's working for somebody, good morning, and he follows morning mark, and he listens. I don't think he's connected yet. And he listens to the manager. You're really listening to the boss. You're doing the will of the boss. You're following the chairman of the board's direct, or president, what the president wants. Because the president says, "I want you to listen to my manager, even though I didn't tell you anything." So you're really doing my will. This is what I want you to do when you listen to the middle. So that's what's happening when it comes to these rabbinic mitzvot, and therefore we have a right to say, "Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu." Okay. Now back to the Gemara. We are on 31b1. The Gemara just said in the middle paragraph. Morning, Mark. How are you?
Morning, Rabbi. I mean, how come you didn't tell me about yesterday?
Long story.
What?
Amar. So the Gemara said that the same way, good morning, Aaron. The same way you can't add to a mitzvah, the same way you can't make less than what you need to do, so too you can't do more. You can't change the mitzvah by adding to that mitzvah. So the Gemara says, Pshita, and therefore the Gemara is applying this law to the law of the four species, the Dalin Minim and the Lulav. The same that you can't put number 5. You can't put a fifth species. So the Gemara says, Mao, isn't it obvious? So the Gemara says, Mao de Tema. You might have thought, Rabbi Yehuda, Lulav Sricha Eged. Rabbi Yehuda says that the Lulav has to be tied, right? So the way you do the mitzvah with the Lulav is you take the Lulav, you tie the Hadassim and the Aravot to the Lulav. So if you go ahead and you bring, let's say, another type of species, and let's say you take a flower, you bring a flowers, another, similar to the Hadassim and the Aravot, you bring a flower, a rose. So what happens if you don't tie the rows together? So it does. So I would have said maybe since you have to tie, since this tying according to Yehuda is a basic responsibility in the mitzvah, you must tie the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav, and that's what you did. And this thing you didn't tie to the hadas to the lulav. You took a rose and you didn't tie it. So if you took a rose and you didn't tie it, so we would say that's not like you added to the mitzvah. If you would have tied the rose to the lulav, you have the lulav with the hadassim and the aravot and the rose. So therefore, it's like you change the mitzvah. The Torah says, "I want you to tie to the lulav, the hadassim and the aravot," and you tied and you added to it. You tied the hadassim, the aravot, and you tied a rose. But here you didn't tie it. So if you didn't tie it, you might not have thought that that's called you really added to the mitzvah, because the mitzvah was to tie the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav, and you did that, and you didn't tie the rose to the lulav. If you had tied the rose also, that would have been, maybe that would have been the violation. But you just held the rose while you have the lulav, the hadassim, the aravot, the rose, and the adro. So therefore, kamash malan, that's the chidush. The chidush is that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, that says that you have to tie the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav. If you took a rose and you held the rose loose, it also be a violation you added to the mitzvah. That's what the Gemara wants to say. Now, we hold technically that you do not need, meaning to fulfill the mitzvah, it's not part of the biblical mitzvah to tie the hadassim to their ravot, and their ravot to the lulav. We tie it together, but not because of a biblical, that's not because it's part of parcel of the mitzvah, that this is what you need to do to fulfill the mitzvah of lulav and etrog. The tying of the hadassim and their ravot is based on a different principle. It's not based on it's not coming from the special mitzvah and lulav and etrog being tied together. We tie together for what reason, Adam? To beautify the mitzvah, which is a general concept that we have for all mitzvot. We beautify a mitzvah, right? So it's nothing to do with uniquely that you have to tie it because the Torah, it's part of the Torah's mitzvah of tying, of taking lulav and etrog, and that's not a vote. It's a special mitzvah to beautify. Every mitzvah is supposed to beautify, and this is the way they say you're supposed to. This is the way to beautify this mitzvah. If you don't tie it together, we hold. If you don't tie it together, technically you got the mitzvah. You got the mitzvah. You took the lulav. Let's say a guy went ahead. They took the lulav and etrog, and that's not ravot, and then that's ravot were not tied. He just held it in his hand. He held it. He didn't tie it. For whatever reason, he couldn't tie it. He didn't tie it. Whatever it was, he got the mitzvah. He took the lulav. Torah says take the lulav. Etrog, and that's not ravot. He took all four, but he doesn't. He won't. He missed out on a different concept called beautifying the mitzvah. So that's what he missed. That's what he missed out on. Okay, so the Gemara continues. The Gemara says, Amama. If the rabbi said, the mar is like the master. Amama. Lo matze etrog. If you didn't find an etrog, lo yavi lo rimon lo parish lo davache. You don't bring a pomegranate, a quince, or anything else instead of the etrog, right? There's no etrog in town. We try to get an etrog. We try to deliver etrog before the holiday. We live in a far-off place, and it's hard to get, it's hard things to come to import, and they didn't find an etrog. We couldn't get an etrog by the time the holiday came. We thought it would arrive. UPS wasn't working well. And now what do we do? So it says you do not take some other fruit instead. Meaning you have the hadassim, you have the aravot, you have the lulav. You got 3 out of 4. You're batting 750. No good. You can't go ahead and take you can't go ahead and take an apple or a pomegranate, a pomegranate instead. So the Gemara says, isn't that obvious? Shita. The Torah says you take an etrog. Torah didn't say you could take well, how would you how would you think you should take an etrog? And maybe this is called adding to the mitzvah. Might be, maybe also, isn't it obvious that you can't bring something else, a substitute for an etrog? It's like a guy says, the Torah says on a 4-corner garment, you put on tzitzit. The guy says, instead of putting on tzitzit, I'll put something else on the 4-corner garment, right? So if it's not tzitzit, you're not doing what Hashem says. The Torah says, put on tefillin. I don't have tefillin. I'll put something else on my head. You need to tell me you don't. So what the Gemara says, shita. So what is the chidush? So the Gemara says, Mao the tema. I might have thought late you should bring something else. You should bring a pomegranate, let's say. I would have thought, you hear that, Aaron? We would have possibly thought that if a person doesn't have a etrog and he has the other 3, let him bring a 4th species. Why? People shouldn't think and forget about there's a 4th species. And you might have said, take a 4th species for a zecher, for remembrance of the mitzvah. The mitzvah has 4 species, and I'm going to go ahead, I'll take, because it's a fascinating idea, that if a person only has, only has 3 species, he goes ahead and he takes 3 out of 4. And the purpose of that is that a person should remember that you don't get the mitzvah. You're not doing it for the mitzvah of lulav. You can't take less than 4, right? But there's an idea that you should go ahead and remember that you have this mitzvah. So you want people to remember there's something called the lulav and dasim aravot. So you take what you can take. That's what the Chafetz Chaim writes. He says, if you don't have in the whole city, 4 kosher species, this is in Siman Tov Reish Mem Tet Nun Gimel. You don't have 4, you got 3 out of 4, or you have 2 out of 4. He says, take what you got. Isn't that fascinating, Mr. Haber? What do you say? Is that fascinating? If it's Sukkot and you don't have the person doesn't have their dasim, that rabot, he only has, let's say he only has a lulav and a dasim. He takes the lulav and a dasim. But he's not getting the mitzvah. I think it's a fascinating idea. A guy only has a lulav and a dasim. He takes the lulav and a dasim. He's not getting credit for the mitzvah. He's not doing the mitzvah. But what is he doing? He wants to remember there's something called the mitzvah of lulav. So maybe next year I'll get it. This year I didn't get the rest. I got 2 out of 4 this year. Maybe next year I'll get all 4. Maybe next year I only get 3 out of 4. But eventually I'll get it. I won't forget. And he says if you have a lulav, you would go ahead and you would actually do the nanuim. You would do the shakes with the lulav. If you only have a lulav and a dasim, you would do the shakes. You would go through in the halal. You would go through the nanuim without the throw. No, but you're not getting the mitzvah. But what you're doing is you're remembering that you have a mitzvah that you got to do, and this is what I'm doing just to. So I'll know next year. So next year I'll be in shape. I'll know. I'll remember. Not that we totally forget about it. Yeah. He gets a reward for doing something. He's not doing the mitzvah. He's not doing the mitzvah of lulav. He's doing something else. He's not very good. So he's not saying I'm doing a mitzvah. Because he's not saying this is a mitzvah. The Torah tells me to do this mitzvah. What he's saying is, I'm saying I'm doing something to remember. I'm not doing the biblical mitzvah. I'm doing something now in order not to forget. Just like according to this, it should be the same. If you only so what is he doing that? He doesn't. Right. But there's no 4 species in the whole city. Throughout the whole city, he cannot get his hands on the 4 species. If he could get his hands on 4 species, he's not supposed to be doing this. But he's in a town they couldn't get, but they only got this. What do you do now? Nobody has. Right. If you can get it, if there's 1 in the city, you can't do this. There's 1 in the city, you get that 1 in the city. And everybody will gift that 1 to each individual. That's what Mr. Haber told us. Yeah. No, very good. The substitute with something. Continue. So I don't want to interrupt you, Mr. Haber. Yes. The answer is we're going to see this point, Mr. Haber. What he's using is something that is relevant, meaning he's not taking an apple. He's taking one of the species themselves that are needed to be used on Sukkot. He's taking those exact species, but right, exactly. We're not telling him take something else instead. Take what you got. You got 2 out of 4. Take it. And what are you doing? You're not getting credit for the mitzvah. What you're doing is you're remembering a mitzvah. It's a remember, like we have something called even us. When we take the lulav from after day 1, from day 2 to day 7, that's just remembering what they used to do by the Beit HaMikdash. They took a lulav. It's for remembrance, but we also haven't got that. We say Zecher and Mikdash Kehillah. Remember what they did in the Mikdash. It's a remembering. So this is remembering. We take what we got just to be in shape. We're just that. So next year we're gonna. If this year Sukkot came and we took nothing. You might come to forget that you might think, you know what, you might say you don't need to take anything on Sukkah. Sukkah, you only got to sit in a Sukkah. Yeah. So very good. Mr. Davis bring up a great point. Let's say Pesach. Pesach is a mitzvah to eat matzah. And there's a certain size that you're supposed to eat of matzah, a kazayit. To fulfill your mitzvah, a guy goes ahead and he eats less than the size of an olive, less than a kazayit, whatever, an ounce, however how much the kazayit is, you did not fulfill your obligation. The obligation is to go ahead and eat a kazayit. You didn't do it. But now, are you supposed to go ahead and you only have a half a kazayit of matzah? Are you supposed to go ahead? Yes, you're supposed to go ahead and eat it. Now, by the way, that case is a little different than this case in the Gemara, because you're actually doing the mitzvah. It's just a matter of you're missing the size, but the item that you're using is exactly the way that total fit. And there are opinions that say that will give you a much higher level credit for that, because you're actually doing the mitzvah, but you're just missing in the size. But here you're not even doing the mitzvah. This case, when you have only 2 out of 4, you're not even mirroring the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is 4. There, Mr. Haber, your case is you have the matzah, the mitzvah to eat matzah, and you got what it takes. You got the matzah, but you're just missing in the amount of the matzah. And that, right, now, very good. That will also come into play. Exactly. So here, that's what the Gemara, that's what we say. You should know, I'll tell you the reverse. The Torah says don't eat not kosher food. The Gemara concludes if you eat less than what about if I eat to get lashes? You have to eat a kazayit of the pork. But what about is there a biblical prohibition to eat half a kazayit? And the conclusion of the Gemara is that there would be a biblical. Maybe you don't get lashes, but you're eating pork. It's pork, but it's not. And you didn't eat the amount to get lashes. So the Gemara concludes that it will be a prohibited min Torah to eat even a small amount. So some say the same way there's a prohibition from the Torah to eat a small amount of pork, there will be a mitzvah. You get even though it's not the full amount. So in the positive sense, if you're doing the mitzvah of matzah, but you're not eating the full amount, maybe there is some sort of mitzvah. The same way there's a sin to eat less than the size, even though you didn't get the full sin, you didn't get the lashes. So they discussed, how would you look at not having the full size of a mitzvah? Would there be some sort of fulfillment of the mitzvah, not in its full sense? So that's a discussion. I don't want to keep everyone late to davening. We're now about to do the mitzvah of davening. Many mitzvot. We have to have a mind to do the mitzvah right, with the proper kavanah. Everyone, Jaime, you want to say something? Have a great day. Some people talk by a waving of a hand too. With a smile is also a way of talking. There's many ways to talk in life. Have a great day. Take care. Yes. That's a very big thing. And that makes it even bigger. Right. But Ralph, we got to change that. We got to change that concept. That's only listen, we got to build it. Right, but I think people have to know that it's not enough. We can't be satisfied with half things. With meaning only reaching one level. That's my opinion, Ralph.